3rd of September here at Liscombe rewilding site in Dorset. Not going to say very much, just going to have a walk around, see how the site looks now in early September. It's about a week since I produced the last video. We're on one of the ley grassland, kind of ryegrass stroke clover lays, I think. It's been cut a few times. Probably 2 or 3 weeks ago it was last cut. So yeah, it's been cut by one of the local farmers, taking the hay away to feed his stock over the winter, which is good from the farmer's point of view and also good from our point of view, because it soaks up the nutrients in the soil, and what the habitats we anticipate will develop here need is low fertility, and taking these hay cuts without putting any manure or fertilisers of any sort on the ground helps to lower the fertility. This grass just soaks up the fertility, and when it's cut it's taken off site and fed to stock and doesn't return to the soil, which is really good from a kind of a future rewilding point of view, because it means the grasses will gradually become less dominant and the wildflowers will have more of a opportunity to recolonise. And we expect over the next few decades that this species poor ryegrass clover type grassland will gradually turn into species rich calcareous grassland on chalk with shrubby patches emerging. That's what we anticipate. It's a rewilding site, so there won't be deliberate long-term management to try and maintain chalk grassland. We'll see how it develops over the coming decades. So the whole kind of philosophy is to address some of the constraints on nature recovery in this kind of landscape, and then once we've addressed those sort of constraints, let nature decide how best to reassemble as wildlife communities across the landscape. It's going to be very exciting to see how things unfold, but at the moment, as you can see, it's very species poor green grassland. So I'm going to shut up now and we'll just have a walk around and provide a nice video record of how the site looks in early September 2024. The weather up in that direction, looking kind of west, looks slightly ominous, so it might get wet. I'll stop filming if that happens, because this little camera isn't waterproof. But fingers crossed we'll be okay for a little while longer. So that at the moment, the sward here is pretty uninspiring. We do have nice patches like this of wild carrot coming through. It's a nice kind of early chalk grassland species. This will probably become a lot more common as it spreads out of these little patches over time. So just the first hints that things are going to gradually reassemble themselves here. There's a bit more. So I expect things like knapweeds will start to appear quite soon as well. Be interesting to see how this looks next summer. So some of the wildflowers we would expect to gradually see appearing was already in the seed bank. They're already in the soil, like these wild carrots presumably. And they'll start to appear just from the seed bank. Other species will, in theory, start to appear as part of seed rain, so blown in the wind and just come off higher slopes, which we haven't really got here. And then some will be dispersed by wild animals. Back in the day, things like aurochs which are obviously globally extinct. They're not here, they're wild cattle, European wild cattle. But here we will have probably longhorn cattle as a surrogate for oryx, and those kinds of animals will disperse the seeds of wildflowers from the surrounding landscape onto here. So we have got some really nice flower-rich chalkgrass and SSSI over in the distance over there in the middle of the shot. That's Liscombe Bowl, or Liscombe Bottom, which includes really lovely SSSI grassland and also some SNCI, Sites of Nature Conservation Importance grassland, which is not quite SSSI quality, but it's still got some nice wildflowers. And hopefully those oryx, those longhorn cattle, surrogates for oryx, will bring some of those seeds in this direction so they can gradually colonise these kind of grasslands. But it will take some time, and that's one of the reasons why it's worth thinking about whether people want to intervene in the early years of a rewilding project like this to kind of inoculate the site with the kinds of wildflowers that would naturally be dispersed but are very constrained in their capacity to disperse because of anthropogenic constraints like driving big mammals like oryx and European wild horse extinct. Without those species in the landscape, their capacity to disperse and recolonise these kind of areas is potentially, for some species, greatly reduced, and that's an anthropogenic problem created by humanity. So we want to ask ourselves, do we want to intervene, given that those species are globally extinct, they're not here? Do we want to collect some seed from nearby species-rich sites and throw a few out on areas like this just to help that dispersal and that gradual colonisation, recolonisation of these areas by wildflowers, herbaceous species, and also as a skylark just got up. So wildflower species, but also woody species, trees and shrubs. So in the first few decades, you would expect this landscape, this rewilding landscape, to be dominated by early successional grassland with emerging shrubland. So probably 3 decades of early successional grassy shrubland, and beyond that we don't really know, but beyond that probably wood pasture, a bit more woodland, but still lots of open grassland and shrubby habitat. You wouldn't want to dictate how things unfold here. You might want to do some early interventions to overcome constraints on the wildlife that might otherwise recolonise the area, but beyond that, in the coming decades and centuries, it's kind of up to nature to determine in what direction this landscape goes, because that's the purpose of the site, is it's kind of rewilding and letting nature redevelop itself, reassemble itself under its own steam, whilst in the early years addressing some of the issues, some of the constraints that humanity has imposed on wildlife. So that's a nice look at this particular arable field. It's quite representative of some of the arable we have at Liscombe. Any comments in the comment section of this video is always very well received, so any observations, suggestions, put them down in the comments section, and a later video we'll probably look at the stream which is just down there.